welcome to Fiber Trek. This is episode 62, and it is the first day of spring. I have to admit, I am a bit sad to see the snow go. I know that that is not a sentiment shared by a majority of the population that I hear talking about seasons. I am an avid Nordic skier. I'm not a good Nordic skier, but I love to Nordic ski, up to backcountry ski. I love it, love it, love it. And so for me, it's a little bittersweet because it is my most favorite way to exercise and get outside and experience the natural world. I like to be cold, and I like to be on skis. So I like the exhilaration of navigating downhills and the thrill of actually reaching the bottom standing up. I may not look good doing it, but I reach the bottom. So if you've seen some of my Instagram posts, I do quite a bit of, I use the word backcountry loosely, although I do go out into like kind of wilderness areas and ski from cabin to cabin, that type of thing. But like just tromping around in the backyard where you're breaking trail, you're in deep snow, and you're in the woods, and so you're kind of navigating different terrain. It's not groomed trails. Anyway, I digress a little bit about my sadness of melting, dripping snow. Right. Welcome. Welcome to you. Welcome to spring. Welcome to new beginnings and all of the sentiment. Again, sometimes it's funny how I latch onto a word, and all of the feelings around what that new growth can mean to all of us. So, right, on the show today, I am flying without show notes, so we'll see how that goes. We know how it will go, but I'm going to talk about works in progress today. I'm going to talk about acquisitions and discoveries. I'm going to talk about Shackleton yarn and Shackleton, and I'm going to just give a nod to place one more time. And I felt like when I was watching the video that I didn't really wrap it up in a real cohesive and coherent way. So I thought, well, perhaps there's a little bit more room for reflection there. And a number of you commented on that segment. So let's see if we can visit it a little bit. Right. So let's go right to works in progress. Did I welcome you all? Let's do that before I do that. Thank you so much for all of you who have reached out and contacted me. You invest your time here in the podcast. You invest your thoughts in the podcast. And I know that I say this every time. I say that every time. But it is important for me to acknowledge that extra bit that you take to provide feedback. And I really appreciate it. So thank you and welcome. Right. Works in progress. I cast on the Boostabini by Gudrun Johnston. I thought I did. Thought it was here. Oh, there it is. And she is the patron designer for the Shetland Wool Week this year. I did knit Ella Gordon's last year, and I have yet to knit the bobble hat. I have all the yarn set aside in a project bag, and I just haven't done it. So I think I might try to throw that on the needles so I have all three, because that's just fun for me to have like all three. And I like the work that I get to do. It's, I think the Miss Rachel Yoke by Kate Davies was the first project that I knit with two hands. I picked the whole thing, the color work portion. And then I practiced some more with Ella Gordon's hat pattern from last year, the Croft Who's hat, and I got to do it again with the Boostabini. And then I think this is kind of all in preparation for the all-over color work of Kate Davies' O cardigan, OA pullover, and so I'm definitely like the skill building piece that I'm doing or being provided with through Shetland Wool Week. So I know what happened with the color choices, Hunt. So it's funny because I saw the pattern and I was like, I want to knit something warm and spicy. I don't know why, but for me, like spice just came up when I saw that. And so I went to the Woolly Thistle, of course, and I was looking at the palette and I was like, what speaks to you? that's not a natural color. And so these are the colors I picked. I love that rusty brown, and then the gold, and this is, it kind of looks a little lilac-y there, but it's more of a warm reddish browny gray. So the colors are shade 78 mix, that's the light, and the gold is shade number 91, and the rust colored one is shade 38. So I've made a few alterations to the pattern. I think that when I pick and I knit with two hands, it definitely changes my stitch gauge. I'm typically a thrower, and so I tend to be a bit, my gauge tends to be a bit tighter, and like I said, I have said this before, I normally go up a needle size automatically. But I'm finding that my gauge is kind of spot on here, and it's pretty loose, and you're supposed to knit 3 repeats of the light dark spiral combinations, and I'm going to end up knitting just 2 full repeats and then 1 repeat of the light. This is a free pattern you can download through the Shetland Wool Week website, so the details are there. You can go to Ravelry and then click your way to the pattern, because I think it's just going to be too long, and I like, my preference is a beanie, like to sit right here on top of my head, versus I don't really like a lot of slack in the top. So I think I'm going to start decreasing for the crown pretty quickly, versus adding another full repeat. So I'm knitting those on 3 millimeters, which I think is the recommended. I think that's a US 4. I'm not very good with that, those types of details, so you'll want to double check. So that's the Boostavini in Jamieson's and Smith, Shetland. I'm also knitting the Nanook by Heidi Kermeyer, and I'm loving this knit. Like, I don't want to stop knitting it. I wake up wanting to knit it. I don't know, like I have talked about before, my projects can often be driven by the yarn that I want to use, not so much the garment that I want. And I'm really enjoying this yarn. This is Lean In, and it's a story-based yarn by Wild Lily Artisans, or Jennifer Goyer. She's the wool manager for Anna Rune's sheep ranch, the Heritage Sheep Ranch in Colorado. And it is a open front cardigan, and I've knit the lace component of it. This is like a bear claw lace, I think this is called. It's kind of an oatmeal color, and I think that's true what you're seeing. So it has a beautiful light brown oatmeal. So garter stitch fronts. It has like a little bit of a cascade effect to it, I think, when it's open. So this bear claw lace kind of runs around the collar. Then you've got garter stitch fronts, stockinette back. The stockinette back is where all your increases take place. It's knit from the top down, and you set the sleeves aside. I'm working on a sleeve now. You can knit these flat or in the round, and I've opted to knit this in the round. And one thing that I've done is she does remark on the fact that by knitting in the round, you end up potentially with a tighter gauge. And I knew that I needed to add additional stitches anyway, even if my gauge stayed the same, because I have my upper arms were larger than the measurement in the schematic. I'm knitting a medium 2. She recommends knitting an inch for an inch of negative ease, and so I'm actually knitting, I think it's a 39 bust, knowing that my gauge tends to be tighter when I knit it on a US 7. And when I calculate out my current gauge on a US 7, it's going to end up as like a 38. So I'm happy with that. And even though that's almost 2 inches of positive ease. But for the arms, the schematic just didn't line up. So I cast on an additional inch, and we'll see how that works out when I have to do all the picking up and putting together. So Yeah, so this is Nanook Lean In by Heidi Kermeyer. I'm knitting it on the US 7, and it's one of the things I can't stop knitting. So I love to come home and I love to just get this out. The yarn, I think I have a tag in here just so you can know what the breeds are. Or not. So Lean In is a BFL, Wensleydale, CVM, Romney, and mohair from Colorado. Single run, 2016, Colorado sourced and milled, 200 yards. I think this was 3 something ounces. I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. I did all the grist work when I picked the pattern out, and I can't remember if I talked about that or not. But you can find this at wildlilyartisanfibers.bigcartel.com. I think she may have a few skeins of this left, but not to worry because I showed you a sneak peek of what's to be released. And she's got some more gorgeous yarn, which would be sweater worthy for certs. So, and then I'm also working on still the Owlette for my niece, which is by Kate Davies, and it's a cardigan. I mean, it's a pullover with kind of cabled owls on the yoke, similar to Owl's, her adult sweater, her adult version. I had to buy US 11 double points, and I finally did that. So I've cast on the sleeve, and I'm just kind of working away, and that's done in Cascade Eco in a kind of a graphite gray kind of color. So I'll talk about Shackleton project when I get to the Shackleton yarn, and I think we'll go right to acquisitions and discoveries. The first thing that showed up is my Taproot subscription. And it's so funny how the universe speaks to you. I got really interested in this article on aromatic, bitter, and sweet homemade digestive bitters for better health. I kind of gotten into bitters in another way, another type of bitters perhaps, but in mixing cocktails. Something that I enjoy doing. It's kind of like, you know, apothecary medieval stuff and using different floral essence, and I don't know, I just like that kind of alchemy kind of like thing, and I love that they all come in little, you know, oil jars or bitter jars. So anyway, my brother got me a really nice set of bitters for Christmas. Well, then this showed up with the bitters. And then I've been watching Maria of Ninja Chickens, and I watched Nicole's latest podcast of The Gentle Knitter. And Maria often gives a tea recipe at the end of her podcast. You can find those recipes also in the show notes on her Ravelry groups. And she is an herbalist as well. And Nicole had talked a little bit about her tinctures and her tincture use in her most recent episode. And I was like, I don't know what happened and why I needed this type of reminding, but I have dabbled in herbalism for personal use before, and I have all of Rosemary Gladstar's books. I used to make my own lip balm, my own salve. I used to make health, well-being types of tinctures and those types of things. And I don't know, I had been living in Vermont at the time, and I moved to Maine, and I don't know what happened. I don't know how I got sidelined away from that piece. So I have a general interest in well-being and personal development. And part of that for me is incorporating in diet, and I use aromatherapy essential oils. And I was like, why are you not making your tinctures and doing this and doing that? And so I was really happy to kind of be reminded of that skill set, that old skill set that I had that I could pull back into what's happening right now. I will say that right now in my personal life, there is a high amount of stress. I'm caring for 2 old dogs that require a lot of support, and we are in the end of life, and that's very hard, and it brings me down. I'm quite blue about where I'm at with them. So I'm finding different ways to invigorate my overall outlook, and I'm do that through some of the oils that I use, and I think bolstering my adrenal system and general nervous system would be helpful. And so this really came at a providential time where I think that I needed that reminder. There's, to lean in and access some skills that I have that could help me be well and be healthy. So yeah, so I am looking forward to rediscovering that and hauling all my old books out and creating some recipes. And anyway, if you'd like to, you can still get this issue, and I would recommend it. And there's other things in here besides that, of course. There's recipes and there's little crafts, and I like that it builds skill in lots of different ways, and you don't have to have a bunch of materials, and you don't have to have a bunch of skill sets to participate. They're just little afternoon experiences. This is weaving lavender wands. And of course, making the bitters. There's a hat pattern. Susan B. Anderson has an adorable little stuffy pattern in here. So, how to kind of create somewhat of a, basic loom and fool around with that. So I like that they're really accessible projects. Anyway, so taproot, and I had a little digression there about bitters and tonic and herbalism and essential oils. So I got that. I also picked up my friend Emily of Fibertown podcast. She has a Etsy shop now where she's selling her hand spun, but she's also selling these bags that she's making with her hand woven hand spun. So this is Jacob, Finn, and Camel that she hand spun, and then it just has this really nice kind of heavy duty linen bottom and muslin interior. So I immediately picked that up, and they are boxed at the bottom. But I love that just subtle hint of the hand woven piece, and it's not something I necessarily do on a regular basis, so it's great to kind of pick that up and support a friend while doing it. I also got, here it is, from the Woolly Thistle. I ordered the Jameson and Smith, of course. And Claire, I had asked if she was able to get the Shetland Heritage line from the same company. And she was able to, because I am going to with reckless abandon, I am going to knit Kate Davies' Sixarine Cape. And it is a combination. I wasn't able to get the Fluga White, but I think that's all the colors. Nope. It is knit in these colors. The Shetland Heritage is, I'm hoping that they explain it on here. Oh, they don't. But I think that it's kind of a historical nod to what the original yarns might have been like in Shetland. And so it definitely has a different feel than the two-ply jumper weight. And it actually feels a little bit more worsted to me. It's definitely a lighter weight yarn, or it feels that way. So anyway, I may be off, but the other one feels more plump, and it has a little bit more woolenness, like a little bit more toothiness, and this feels a little bit smoother to me. So I picked that up, and then no surprise here, even though I said last time that it would be okay to not order the Plotolopi right now, I went ahead and ordered it anyway because I was ordering all this other stuff. So, what's that? Okay. So I picked up enough Plotolopi in black and white to do the Rusty cardigan. I know, I'm a total joiner, right? And so here it is. Be kind of fun to just spin this too. But anyway, so I'm gonna, I don't know, maybe I'll put that on the needles next. The black just came, it had been back ordered, so I have everything I need now to participate in that Rusty knit along. I probably won't be participating in like the real way, because I'm not sure I'm going to steek it. I'm probably going to leave it as a pullover, and which is just my preference anyway for sweaters. I might steek it. I don't know. But anyway, so that was an acquisition and discovery. I think that's it for acquisitions and discoveries. It's enough. Keep knitting, Sarah. Keep knitting and spinning. Let's talk about Shackleton, shall we? Right. So my Shackleton project is Kate Davies Frosted Midnight. It's going to look just like it did last time you saw it, because it's gray yarn. It's like a fingering. It could probably be a lace weight knit on US 3s. But I'm making progress. And right,
I
designed
this
yarn as part of the Shackleton craft along. And this is ongoing. It's still going. It probably will go forever. But we are taking the time that it took Shackleton to embark on and return of his Antarctic expedition, which he never actually fulfilled the goal of the expedition, but everybody came back alive, his entire crew, which is an amazing feat if you've been following along on that Shackleton story. Which is why I chose him as the muse for this project, because it really was about an epic knit and being daring, and if you don't, everybody gets out alive, right? So no big deal. Like, reach for the stars, you're coming back. And so a lot of people have, and some people have finished projects, some people haven't, some people, are joining now, but that's my epic knit. And part of that was I couldn't find a yarn that really suited me and suited the project, and so my friend Jenny of Starcraft Fiber said I should design it, and she gave me access to 25 pounds of gray island fleece, and we designed a yarn together based on some of my thoughts, and this is the batch that's ready for sale. Let's see what I can do. Ugh. Sorry about it'll be worth it. Oh. Here it is. This batch, so the yarn that I did, we'd spun it at a little bit lighter weight. And the spinner was having a hard time with some of the length of the fiber. It was kind of tripping it, and so it stop and restart, stop and restart. So when we changed it, we just made it a little bit heavier. So this is a little bit heavier, but still the Shackleton base. It's still, predicated on the same design and need. And this is going to be ready to go out to all of you fairly soon. I have a couple things I need to do, like, start a business. So, but I anticipate that it'll be coming out in the next month or so. I'm super excited about this. My first signature yarn, and it needs a home. So I'll keep you posted if you would like to adopt one of these skeins. I'm definitely putting this back in the bag so that it spared the dog hair, which is the carpet. Hold on. So let's talk a little bit about where Shackleton is, shall we? We had left, and right around October 23rd is when the Endurance sank. And so they had, let's just get a little backstory here. So she's sinking. October 27th, Shackleton wrote, the position was, let's see, nope, we already talked about that. So he says, the task is to reach land with all of the members of the expedition. It is hard to write what I feel. She had drifted for at least 1,186 miles and were 346 miles from Paulet Island, the nearest point where there was any possibility of finding food and stores left by an Argentine relief ship. Shackleton knew of these stores because he was the person who purchased the stores in London on behalf of the Argentine government. Shackleton ordered the boats, gear, and provisions and sledges lowered to the floe. The Endurance had been locked in the ice for 281 days. The 28 men pitched 5 tents 100 yards from the ship, but were forced to move when a pressure ridge started to split the ice beneath them. Ocean camp was established on a thick, heavy floe about 1.5 miles from the wreck. On November 21st, 1915, the Endurance raised its stern and slipped beneath the ice, coming to rest at the bottom of the sea. The ice was rotting around them, so on December 20th, Shackleton decided to abandon Ocean Camp and march westward to reduce the distance to Paulet Island. Christmas was celebrated on December 22nd with their last good meal for 8 months. 2 of the boats were now man-hauled in relays from Ocean Camp, the James Caird and Dudley Docker, with the Stancomb Wills being left behind. If their ice floe disintegrated, the 28 men would jam into the 2 boats, each measuring 20 feet in length, to be at the mercy of the Weddell Sea. On November 29th, with the ice too cracked to carry them, they set up camp on a solid floe, but it cracked during the night as well. They shifted to a strong old floe surrounded by ice too soft to sledge over, but with not enough open water to launch the boats. Adrift on their new home, they crossed the Antarctic Circle on New Year's Eve. Shackleton wrote, "Thus, after a year's incessant battle with the ice, we had returned to almost the same latitude we had left with such high hopes and aspirations 12 months previously. But under what different conditions now, our ship crushed and lost, and we ourselves drifting on a piece of ice at the mercy of the winds." Meanwhile, Wild returned to Ocean Camp to retrieve the Stancomb Wills. The ice disintegrated to the point where they were forced into the boats on April 9th. Ooh, that's right before my birthday, so we're coming right up before that. My birthday was April 8th. They were forced into the boats on April 9th. The floe split directly beneath them, and 2 hours later, the channels opened wide enough for them to throw their stores aboard the boats and cast off for a 3-mile stretch of open water a short distance away. The Dudley Docker got caught between 2 ice floes, but the James Caird was able to pull her free. By evening, they had retreated to a new floe and once again hauled up the boats, pitched tents, and lit the blubber stoves. We'll leave it there. So they were hauling those boats overland, the men strapped in. And again, you know, hanging out on an ice floe in the Weddell Sea in Antarctica in April. How do we all feel about that? That's pretty amazing. It is amazing to me that endurance is, that's the only word to really describe their expedition, that they were able to sustain their well-being and their spirit, their strength and fortitude, come together. I'm sure there was squabbling, but you know, nobody broke apart. That team worked together, and I think I just am so inspired by what these men did, and I often think about how I would respond. I mean, here I am like, my tinctures and my oils, and I mean, these guys were like, you know, eating penguins and trying to battle off scurvy, you know. So I don't know. I mean, I like to come back to these and get grounded in these stories and create a sense of adventure and be, I don't know, just be like, yeah, like that's an amazing feat that humans can do. And there's lots of these great stories around. So this happens to be one for me that, because of my fascination with cold places, extreme environments, Antarctica, that really resonates. So anyway, Shackleton and the yarn. So I think I've covered it all for Yarny Bits. So we've got Shackleton, my project, the yarn, and works in progress. So I was able to catch up with a couple podcasters who went to the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, and that looked like it was a blast. I enjoyed watching Kate of Hawthorne Cottage. She's out of Northern Ireland. Her description of herself was so charming and endearing, especially when she describes herself meeting Kate Davies. And anyway, I really got a kick out of her excitement, and I hope that I can make it next year. So if you haven't had a chance to check out Kate, head on over to Hawthorne Cottage. And she, the first episode of hers that I watched, she had knit the Kate Davies yoke. So I was immediately drawn to her podcast because I could see garments that I enjoyed, a lot of different types of wool that I've used. So head on over to Kate's podcast on YouTube. Right. I feel like, place. The last thing I really wanted to touch on was the overwhelming response people had to the conversation we had last time on place-based yarns. And I was very much affirmed by your comments that I didn't go too deep and it wasn't enough. I think that there was a real vulnerable component of that conversation for me because I don't often get to talk about the aspect of wool and place as it relates to my spirit. And I think that's what I was really driving at last time we were talking, that act and those materials and that connection is really where I derive a lot of my faith and my hope and my understanding of the world around me. And so it has a real strong spiritual, or it creates a real strong spiritual base for the way that I choose to enact in this world and be awed and inspired by it. So I think there's a lot more conversation that can happen within those contexts of spirit, land, and wool. I don't often get to talk like that, and it was wonderful to have the pack howl back to me like, I totally get it. I use the same language. That is what I've been wanting to articulate. A lot of people are like, oh, you're a knitter. And it's so much more than that for me. And there's a real sense of power. I'm very much empowered by those connections. And then, of course, the literature that leads me to or has led me here, whether that's myth or fairy tales or poetry or what have you. A lot of it ends up centering around and creating and centering and grounding me. So I know that this feels like a really, I don't know if I had already said this once, but I feel like this was a really vulnerable place to be, and I'm really happy that this format ended up being a space to reveal some of that vulnerability and thought process. And I think anytime we want to kind of reveal some of those deep, meaningful philosophies, if you will, about certain things, that there is an element of or potential for commentary from other people, and it was wonderful to have such supportive commentary come back. So thank you very much for that, and I'd love to continue conversations. And I can't remember if last time I provided some recommended reading, but if you're looking to explore a little bit more of land conservation and conversations about land and spirit and those types of things, I would recommend Annie Dillard and Terry Tempest Williams, Wendell Berry, Jean Lodgson, obviously Peter Forbes and his work. And I'm currently rereading for the third time Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I really enjoy her perspective on storytelling and women so those are just a few ideas. I know a number of people out there are looking at women in work, and that book has come down through the Woven Road and her work in the archaeological settings in Iceland. So I think there's a lot of multidisciplinary ways to approach some of these things within our craft, and it's just wonderful that we can do that we can jump off of this base of wool and go in a number of different directions of exploration of ourselves or exploration of our natural history or our archaeological history. It's just so awesome to build up the conversations that way. So I hope that wherever you are and whatever landscape you are in, that you're enjoying it and able to get outside and able to get some knitting in. And I think it's time for me to say a fond farewell. I hope that wherever your fiber treks may take you, that you return home with lots of soulful stash, and I will see you next time. All right, bye.